Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the GM. I'm your guy Boulanger, and up next, man, we're gonna be talking about Ravens Nation being on fire. Um, the Baltimore Ravens have had several moments of controversy over the history of their franchise, all the way back to the Ray Lewis murder trial back in the late 1990s to the Ray Rice scenario of domestic violence, and they've seemed to have gotten over it and stayed a contending team, a playoff bound team. Uh, they've had some transition at quarterbacks and the defense transition from being one that was great to one that was really good to one that was middle of the pack. And so with all the transition, Baltimore has, continued to stay afloat. But what I'm afraid of is happening is that Baltimore burning to the ground. Now, I don't mean literally burning to the ground, but I'm talking about the Baltimore Ravens franchise becoming a franchise of turmoil that turns the Baltimore Ravens into somebody like the Houston Texans, somebody like the Detroit Lions, somebody like the Carolina Panthers. And I'm gonna give you four reasons why. Four reasons why if Baltimore doesn't make the right moves over the next month, they have the potential to take a downward turn and not get up for a long time. So let me give you reason number one. Reason number one, Baltimore has to make some big decisions, and they must be the right decisions, or they have the potential to be down and out for a while. Number one, the Baltimore Ravens can no longer depend on the history of the Baltimore Ravens. What I mean by that is Baltimore has historically had a pristine image. They've been uh, named or identified as a top five franchise. They've been understood to be a model franchise. Uh, they even have the moniker, the Ravens Way. And those things have stood the test of time through all the controversies, the up seasons, the down seasons, so on and so forth. And I think part of the reason why they've been able to hold on to that historical narrative is because winning has always been a possibility. Okay. And anytime you're in a team sport and you win, that seems to cover a lot of your scars, a lot of your wounds, a lot of your blemishes, right? And so I think because winning may be at a point at this time in Ravens history that it's not going to be such a possibility that some of the Ravens narrative is now being exposed. You see, you can live off your history as long as you have moments that reaffirm that history. You understand? You see, we remember the 2012 Super Bowl with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and Terrell Suggs and Joe Flacco, uh, and all those big moments throughout those playoffs. We remember the 2000 Super Bowl where Trent Dilfer, you know, managed the offense and the defense, pitch shutouts and shut down other offenses. We remember the Lee Evans drop in the back of the end zone, which had us, in real Super Bowl contention. We remember the battles with the Steelers and the battles with the Bengals, the battles with the New England Patriots over the years, and when we were always in contention. And that's part of what built that the historical narrative about being us being a contending team, a model team, and and we were known for good treatment of players and their families, and being, a family oriented franchise, and even John Harbaugh being sort of a player's coach. And so all this has built the history. And that's partly because there was always an idea or a thought that we could win or that we would win. And I think that as things become shaky with Lamar Jackson, I think that the understanding that we could stop winning is very, very high. And when the potential to win goes away, the potential to keep things buttoned up also goes away. You see, because you see the decision making of the institution that is the Baltimore Ravens become more and more of the narrative. We saw Rashad Bateman come out and smash EDC yesterday, um, and kind of put the Ravens organization on blast, and kind of highlighted what we've all been saying for a number of years, which was anti-history. You see that the things he said was anti-Ravens history. uh, taking care of the players, family oriented, taking responsibility, taking ownership. You see that's not who the Ravens had been historically. That's not the narrative that has been out there historically. And so now the covers are being snatched off, and we're now able to see more and more. And as I give you my last three reasons, it'll make even more sense. And so I think we can no longer live on the history. We have to do things in the present to reaffirm and validate who we've said we were, who people believe we were, and what the narrative is that we are. Okay. So that's number one. No longer being able to rely on the history, especially as winning becomes more of a question. Number two, um, which is probably the number one reason, but number two, there is a player revolt. A revolt is nothing more than individuals willing to stand against the institution, not when they're outside of it, but while they're still in it. And that's what we're seeing. I made a whole video, which I'll put in the description section. I made a whole video about a Baltimore Ravens player revolt, and it didn't get a lot of views. And maybe because that's something we don't want to acknowledge, but that's exactly what's happening. And let me give you a few examples of why I believe there is a player revolt. So it's customary that when a player leaves a franchise, they speak their mind. They point out institution flaws, organizational problems, things of that nature. That's customary. And so we remember guys like Willie Snead saying some things on his way out the door. We remember Dez Bryant, who said a few things when after he stopped in for a drink of water with the Baltimore Ravens. We remember Marquise Brown saying a few things after he left. We remember Derek Wolfe filed a grievance against the Baltimore Ravens because of some injury issues. So we remember those things, but some of those guys were out of the institution already. But because Baltimore has been such a buttoned up team, right? They keep things in house, keep things quiet, keep things out of the media. Nothing gets released, but something began to happen about 3 years ago. And I won't say it began with Lamar Jackson, but I won't say it didn't either. But I remember Lamar Jackson coming out and saying, you know, he spoke out against the offense a little bit, where he talked about, hey, you know, this is my paraphrase, we're unsuccessful because the other team knows our plays. And that's something you say in-house, customary for the Baltimore Ravens, not something you put out there for everybody to see. But he put it out there, it got swept up under the rug. And I remember after that, you heard Marcus Peters say some things, even when we've even seen Marcus Peters while in the institution of the Baltimore Ravens. We saw him get into it with John Harbaugh. We saw him get into it with some other players about plays and play calling and poor decision making. Right? He did that while he was inside the institution. We saw Marlon Humphreys make a statement about I can't remember the exact quote, but he was talking about doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same result while he was inside the institution, right? We we've seen Marquise Brown while he was still a Raven, right? He made the quote and said something about, hey, why have soldiers if you're not going to use them? And I don't know who it was aimed at. I don't know if it was aimed at Lamar, Greg Roman, John Harbaugh, or whoever, but he still said it while he was inside of the Ravens. That's not something that was being done before. Okay. We um we also saw uh um Earl Thomas speak out about some things as he was a Ravens for a short period of time. We saw J.K. Dobbins at the end of this season, say, hey, Tyler Huntley should not have been in that situation. He also said that he should have been in the game, right? He was upset, right? But that's stuff that we have not been seeing while players were inside of the Ravens organization. We just hadn't seen that. And we but what we have seen a time or two when people did say something, what happened to them? They got gone. They got gone when they spoke out against the organization. And then the most recent scenario is Rashad Bateman, who doesn't hide. He he doesn't do it cryptically. He comes right out in direct opposition of EDC's statement. We have not been seeing this before. We have not been seeing marquee players stand up and speak out against the ills of the Baltimore Ravens institution. We have not been seeing it. But now we're able to see it more frequently and more frequently. And seeing before, in a time or two, they were secondary guys. But these are primetime players. J.K. Dobbins is a primetime player. Rashad Bateman is a primetime player, at least when he's available. Lamar Jackson is a prime time player. Marcus Peters, at the time that he was making these statements and having the beef with John Harbaugh, was a primetime player. And so I think that this is not customary for the Baltimore Ravens, which lets me know more and more that Ravens Nation is on fire. Okay? So first, we can no longer rely on the history because our current sins are now being exposed. Number two, there is a player revolt. I believe that. Number three, the Baltimore Ravens have a tendency to pick system coordinator over player. Now, I've made this statement before, but let me point out a few things. You see, when you saw um uh the former defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, he would blitz and blitz and blitz and blitz and blitz and blitz and blitz. Why? Because that's his system. And even though his secondary was getting exposed and getting beat and getting burnt, guess what he was still doing? He was still blitzing, right? You see, system over player versus player over system. Player over system would say, okay, bam, we're not doing so swell with blitzing. We're not really getting home and it's leaving our guys exposed. Let's see what they do well, which is one thing that Rashad Bateman said yesterday. Hey, play to the player's strengths. And so, and so, but he stayed there and continued to blitz and continued to blitz. I'm talking about Wink Martindale and blitzed and blitzed and blitzed for years up until the point where the Baltimore Ravens made a coordinator change, right? But at that point, the damage had already been done. You had 2 seasons of just getting beat over the top, right? And so, why are you blitzing when you don't have the horses to blitz? But they kept doing it. Why? Because coordinator and system over player or player personnel. Okay. Greg Roman, coach or coordinator, system over personnel. Now, Greg Roman is what I call a starter OC, which means he's good to get a young quarterback started, but after about a year or two, that quarterback should have outgrown Greg Roman's system, which is what Lamar Jackson did. Once Lamar Jackson won the MVP, they should have began to move on from Greg Roman and get more into the passing game, things of that nature. But that's not what they did. See, we heard the narrative that, oh, they built the team around Lamar. They built the team around Lamar. Well, there is not one single player that you can pick that said they put this player in the place to build around Lamar. No, they picked players for the system. Greg Roman's system that was already outdated after Lamar Jackson's second year. And even though the offense got worse in 2020 and worse in 21 and worse in 2022, grinded to a halt in 2022, what did they do? They still stuck with Greg Roman, refused to make an OC change when it was very clear that it was needed. And Greg Roman called some of the worst plays situationally, some of the worst plays as it pertains to a game plan. But John Harbaugh stuck with Greg Roman. See, that's an example of system over player. And what does that do to a player? It makes a player frustrated because I'm stuck inside this box that I don't fit anymore. It's very clear to a player that this system isn't working, but they have to continue to go out there over and over again, same plays, and get the same results. John Harbaugh is a system over player guy. See, I think he genuinely loves the players. I do. But I think he loves more that he empowers his coordinators to do what they do, put their systems in place and run it. I don't think he challenges them to make changes. I don't think he challenges his coordinators to to um be innovative. Because even after John Harbaugh talked about the week that Devin Duvernay didn't get any run really, oh yeah, we gotta get Devin Duvernay involved. What happened that very next week? Nothing. You see, and that's because system over players. You see, if Devin Duvernay is fast and skilled and talented, you find a way in the system or out of the system to get him the ball. You see, if you got a quarterback as dynamic as Lamar Jackson, you set him up to get the ball out of his hands quicker so that he takes less hits. If you when you understand player over system, but that's not what we saw. And now all of Ravens Nation is frustrated, and we're beginning to hear about it. So that's number three. They've had a system over player approach, and it's created frustration, which is what you heard from Bateman, which is what you heard from JK, which is what you heard from Marcus Peters, which is what you heard from Lamar Jackson a couple of years back. And the fourth reason, which is maybe the biggest reason, is the Baltimore Ravens have a problem with indecision. Indecision looks like straddling the fence and not making a decision one way or another. Here's why I say that. The Baltimore Ravens delay decisions that are obvious. Let me give you an example. Remember all the way back when Dennis Pitta was the tight end, and every year he was getting hurt, every year he was missing time. The Baltimore Ravens held on to Dennis Pitta year after year after year until Dennis Pitta's body would not let him play any longer, and Dennis Pitta, along with the Ravens collectively, parted ways and he went into retirement. When you continue to come forward, right? We saw the same thing happen with Ronnie Stanley. They paid Ronnie Stanley. Ronnie Stanley got hurt, brought Ronnie Stanley back. Ronnie Stanley got hurt again, brought Ronnie Stanley back, and he still wasn't ready. Now, should they have cut Ronnie Stanley? No, they got too much money invested. But indecision says you don't draft the left tackle to back him up so that when he is out, he can take his time to properly heal. They didn't draft the left tackle. Indecision. Indecision looks like when you um, trade away a first round tight end for a second round pick, but then 2 years later you draft two tight ends. See, that's called indecision. You're stuck in between where you need to go and where you are. Indecision looks like looking for a pass rusher, having one in tow in Zadarius Smith, but being unwilling to sign him and letting him walk, waiting on a compensatory pick a whole year later, which had no impact on that current team. Indecision looks like still looking for a pass rusher, number one pass rusher, having Matt Judon, who was a two-time Pro Bowler, but never got to a place where you could sign him, and then letting him walk, waiting on a compensatory pick, which had no impact on the current team. See, indecision looks like Lamar Jackson winning the MVP in 2019, yet, and then coming back and leading his team to the playoffs in 2020, and then not being able to get a deal done, and then in 2021 not being able to get a deal done, and in 2022 not being able to get a deal done. See, that's called indecision. And then now here you are in 2023 without a deal done, and now you stand to lose your franchise quarterback. That's called indecision. See, they choose to stay with a player too long, and then when time comes to replace that guy, you didn't get a replacement. You see, indecision is never pulling the trigger on a trade to get a number one receiver. That's indecision. Standing in between two decisions and not making one. Indecision is when you should have cut Marcus Peters and got that $10 million in cap space available this past year. That was a prime opportunity to cut him. He was coming off an ACL tear. You know, guys are not never 100% after that. He was already 30. Why not take the 10 million and go get you a wide receiver? Or go get you a replacement cornerback? See, that's indecision. And it's that same indecision that has caused them to go to the draft and miss, and go to the draft and miss, and go to the draft and miss when they had guys in-house that they could have signed and should have signed and they let walk because they took the cheaper route and missed. Such as Eric DaCosta's comments in his press conference at the combine. Well, we just continue to swing and swing and swing. Well, what that means is you missed it, missed and missed. Now Bateman could be a hit. He really could. He has the size, weight, speed. He has the talent. He has some drop issues. He has some injury issues, which we'll talk about that in another video. But he could be a number one guy. But look how long it took you to really get a guy who matched Lamar Jackson's skill set. Indecision. Waiting too long to make a decision that needs to be made. Indecision. 2018, where you saw Joe Flacco was failing at what he was doing from 17. He was failing in 18, and you waited to half the year was gone to put Lamar Jackson in. Indecision. And so what I'm saying, Ravens Nation, when I say the Ravens Nation is on fire, I'm talking about all of the monikers we have: Flock Nation, the Flock, Ravens Nation. It's all on fire. And what I mean by that is that there is no way that anybody's going to get out of this thing uninjured. And a bonus, let me tell you a bonus. A bonus is the Baltimore Ravens seem to have no direction. That's a bonus reason why it's on fire and has the potential to burn to the ground. And burning to the ground would look like we turn into the Detroit Lions, the Houston Texans, so on and so forth. And here's why. Here's why. You see, when it looks like you can't make a decision, such as the Lamar Jackson contract, all of the free agents see that. And then you got this looming controversy, and all of the free agents see that. And now the historical Ravens narrative is now being uncovered to not be so pristine. And so what it meant to be a Ravens in the past may not hold that same weight now in the present. And so now you really have a pivotal off season. Can you clean up this mess? Can you clean up the training staff blunders that you've had? Can you clean that up? Can you clean up the player revolt? Can you restore and show some evidence that you are who you say you were? Ravens history. Can you show that you can make solid decisions that look like you have a direction? Can you show that you have a plan of action? Listen. If anybody can plug in the comment section and tell me where does it look like the Ravens are headed, because I don't see a place. Think about what I'm saying. Okay, you had 6 first rounders up until this point. Okay, the 2018, excuse me, first round pick Lamar Jackson, who's also the MVP. He's on the fringe of leaving if no contract is done. The 2019 first round pick is already gone. The 2020 first round pick, Patrick Queen, there's been rumors that he may be traded for some draft picks. Right? Think about what I'm saying. The 2021 first rounders, Rashad Bateman, um, just blew up the general manager. Odafe took a step back. So you don't so where are the Baltimore Ravens headed? What key player do you have that you say, you know what? He's going to be a cornerstone and we can build around him. Where? Who is he? Where is he? You see, you have a new OC, but no guarantee at quarterback. What's the plan of action? You got a win now defense, and all you need is a plug and play corner and a little help at the edge rush position. But you got a win now defense, but you got a rebuilding offense. Does that sound like it matches? If they hit reset at the quarterback position, they might as well rebuild the whole offense. You know why they should be rebuild the whole offense? Because you don't have a number one that's been identified quite yet. One who's somebody who's stepped to the front and say, you know what, I got this. So you may have to depend on a rookie. You want to go get some free agents, but the free agents might not come because you don't know what you don't know who's going to be at the quarterback position. Win now defense, rebuilding offense doesn't make sense. You got a $90 million corner that you owe 3 more big years for, Marlon Humphrey. You got a $70 million safety. You got a number 15 overall pick in Kyle Hamilton, another safety. So you got a question at the cornerback position. You got $100 million linebacker. You got his running mate is a first round pick who's been rumored to be on potentially traded. You got a pretty solid team up front with Calais Campbell and Metabuke and Roger Washington and those guys. So you have a win now defense. All you need is just a couple of plug and play guys, but you got a rebuilding offense. Does that sound like it makes any sense? Does that sound like we have any kind of direction? No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. And so when you really think about it, When you really think about it, every aspect of Ravens Nation is on fire. You don't know where you're headed because you've been leaning on where you've been. The players are frustrated. You don't seem to be able to make decisions. So listen, Ravens Nation, I do not want to become the Detroit Lions of the AFC. But if we don't clear up this controversy, and if we don't make a right decision this offseason to stabilize the franchise, we're in big trouble. And the only decision I can see that being made that stabilizes this franchise is to get Lamar Jackson under contract, because he's been the best thing going in Baltimore since 2018. And if you remove him, you remove any foundation and any certainty of what the Baltimore Ravens will look like in 2023 and going forward. And if Baltimore is uncertain about Baltimore, then all the other players who could have wanted to come there are going to also be uncertain. So listen, that's my take, man. I hope you guys, uh, you know, participate in the comment section. Hit like, hit subscribe, and let me know what you guys think. I'm your guy Boulanger. This is my take, and I'm out.